It's the age-old conundrum of the liberated woman. Yes. So there's a few things to consider, one of which is that, of course, who you are as a human, right, has many facets, and some of these facets are wanting to use your brain and wanting to have a career, and there's nothing wrong with that. On the contrary, I think this is really one of the gifts that we have, that we can do that, and we can do that somewhat freely in our part of the world, right? This isn't true in some parts of the world, but for all of us who have arrived at this location, free to travel with a passport and, all of that we can do that. And that is not a gift to be taken lightly, and it's also something that's very rewarding and really good, right? So that's out of the question, meaning there's nothing wrong with that ever. But like you said, your go on steroids isn't that. Your go mode on steroids is an overcompensation for probably feelings of unsafety or out of control or not taken care of, or, like from the past, parentally or relationally, right? Sometimes it's one or the other or both. And so that doesn't really have to do with who you truly are. You still might want to kick ass in business and use your good brain, but the difference between kicking ass in business and using your good brain because that's who you are and go on steroids is that go on steroids has a grip on you versus you, sovereignly bringing those gifts into your world. So what you want to look at is where's the source from the go on steroids, and how can you supply yourself with a different kind of safety and security and comfort and kind of containment, so that the go on steroids doesn't own you, right? So that's one set of considerations. If you're not gripped by it, then relationally speaking, something totally different happens, right? So your avatar of a good relationship material is the Viking man, and so when we and that is a very interesting avatar, because there is adventure, right? There's a bit of a dark side because there is raiding and pillaging, right? There is there's that little bit of danger and conquering that's very attractive, of course. But there's also some very practical things like community-minded, service-oriented towards the community, right? There's a very strong spiritual component in that Viking avatar, and there's a very strong kind of straightforward, steady, but open-hearted gaze and influence in that avatar, right? So, well, somebody like that would, of course, support you using your brain and all of that, right? But not if it's a knee-jerk, right? If everything else needs to be put second over your need to control and do the thing that you need to do, right? And so when you are able to mitigate that grip, then what happens is you're entering in a relationship where both people bring the best to the relationship. And of course, interestingly enough, which the Viking is one of my two cards too. Interestingly enough, right, in the Viking culture, as far as they can tell, women were also very much sailing and raiding and fighting and conquering and contributing in all aspects of the culture. So it was actually a culture where it wasn't like women were home knitting while the dudes, right? So there you have an answer to that. You would bring the best of your ability to your partner, and your partner would bring the best of his ability, and there would be overlap, where you decide who does what, and then there will be strengths, and you bring that to it. So that's the reducing go on steroids. If you don't reduce that and you pick the Viking, you will be in for a constant fight, and you'll be in for mutual disappointment, because Viking's gonna go something like, just put the shit down here for a moment and focus on something else than, your phone and your computer and getting things done and making plans for this thing. There's something happening here, right? And if you're not able to do that, or if you start complaining that he's not making enough money or fishing enough fish or whatever, right? He's going to turn his attention somewhere else where there's less resistance, because the resistance is quite unpleasant. So now, sexually speaking, in the study group, we have this flavor that's called camp nurse tending to a wounded warrior after a day of battle, right? Some of you have done this flavor. And so camp nurse tending to a wounded warrior after a day of battle, of course, is a both caring and sexual flavor, in the sense that she's essentially patching him up for the other parts of the relationship to resume. And so that particular flavor, right, that kind of devotional flavor, Shiva has that, requires that flavor too, so to speak. That's a very good flavor to cultivate sexually. Right? And of course, what does a devotional flavor mean versus, let's say, a, what do you want to call that? Subservient, that's the word I was looking for. A subservient flavor. A subservient flavor would be just like, here, have your soup. I'll do, like it, but it's not that. It's like I'm bringing something to you so that the two of us can play again. Yeah. We will deal with this all afternoon. So yes, so just hold your horses for a moment. And then when we come back, we'll take a break now. When we come back, you'll get to experiment how you would bring those flavors. And of course, those flavors then elicit a different response than the response that you typically get. Right? That's the fun part. And you notice that I heard some of you had like a delightful taxi driver, right? So the delightful taxi driver essentially was given a flavor that he probably doesn't see that often, right? And then that made him delightful. What we bring to any relationship has a response. Hopefully, and this is always the goal, is that whomever you meet, you leave them better than you found them, so to speak, right? Meaning you give them something. You don't disturb them or do things that disturb their system when they come home, right? But you give delight, you give joy, you give energy, right? So that's a nice practice to have. And sometimes that means not giving sexual energy to somebody because it's not, then it's not good for them. Imagine you're like throwing all your sexual mojo at the taxi driver who has a pregnant wife at home, 2 days before delivery, and now he's like fantasizing about you. You probably wouldn't give that man. You can feel that wouldn't be something to give that man. But could you give that man joy and enjoyment and gratitude and compliment, for the service he provides, and give him something to laugh and stuff? Yeah, absolutely. So the giving of an energy comes with a responsibility, but it also comes with a response. And so it's really interesting to have many different ways of being able to, bring energy through your body and then see how different things produce different responses. And you can most certainly elicit different responses in your chosen partner. So yes, this afternoon, coming soon to a workshop room near you. there's an understanding in a relationship that there will be hard times, right? And that one or both partners will have to work on things at times. So I'm not saying that anytime something is wrong, a dude immediately takes, to the hills with Heidi. But what we're talking about specifically is go on steroids, right? So what you're talking about is psychological healing that needs to happen. Yeah. Which is, of course, you have to do some of that. In any relationship, you'll have to learn how to communicate. You have to iron out certain things that don't work well. But what I'm talking about is, let's just say you are saying to your partner, I would really like for you to make the money and manage it, right? I don't want to make money anymore. I'll make enough to buy my shoes, but I'm not going to really make that much money, right? So then you say that. But then anytime he says, well, we have a budget and this isn't in the budget, right? You throw a massive fit and you go, well, this isn't working for me, and why are you managing the money, and I should manage my own money, and I want to make my money and spend my money, and fuck off, and I don't trust what you spend the money on, and eventually he'll say, you said you wanted this, now I'm doing it, now you don't like it. Okay, I'm just not going to do it anymore, right? So, and this is how it goes in many relationships where somebody says, why don't you do that? And when then the other person does it, it's nothing but suffering and pain and criticism and whatever, right? Because you don't actually really want them to do it. You think you want them to do it, but when they do it, you can do much better, or you want to do much better, or it's because you need the control or stuff. That's what we're talking about. Yeah, I mean, who wants that, right? I mean, the only people who tolerate that are people who are locked in some codependent patterns, right? No one in their right mind goes, oh yeah, I'll do that. Well, you don't do it right. It's not right. I don't like it, for a long period of time, and just continue sticking their head in the meat grinder, so to speak, right? They just go, I don't need this. I'm not going to fight every step along the way around decisions that I was supposed to make. So that's one set of circumstances. Now, this also applies sexually, which is that if you are, let's say, you want something from your partner, like in the more erotic domain, and it's not natural for your partner, meaning it's not their home flavor, and they are really, trying to also animate some other flavors. If you, in that moment, then, give a lot of criticism, it's just going to go, that's not, no. And like I said, the only time that isn't the case is when people are locked into these crazy, patterns, trauma patterns, or whatever you want to call it, where then their life depends on doing it right for mommy, so to speak, or daddy. And then, of course, that's a whole other horrendous situation. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about animating different flavors through the body for the delight of bringing different flavors out in your partner so that there's more range and more play. And also for those of you who want partners to know where to put the emphasis in the energetic output. That's not to say you don't have I like using my head a lot, and I like organization, and I like systems, and I like, I love all those things, and I'm really good at them. So it's not like I don't want to do them, but I don't want to have to do them, meaning I don't want to be gripped by it to the point where I can't, and I have been gripped by it to the point where I can't put it down. And it took years to find that sweet spot between doing the things I really am good at doing and not overdoing them for the sake of compensating for something, right? So, yeah.